Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Catalina, and
Morning.
welcome to our first of this our series for 2021 for monthly chats. Tobias Wealth Wisdom. Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome. Today I'm joined by Catalina Franco Cicero, who's one of our financial planners and a fitness enthusiast, to talk about smart debt management. We're really excited about this because a lot of times people think about debt as as a problem, and many of the clients that we work with don't necessarily have debt problems, but they do have debt, as many of us have. And there's always opportunities to manage it in a smart way to make sure that you're maximizing your financial house from all angles. Catalina is going to talk to us a little bit about that today. Again, welcome, Catalina.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I guess just to get started, a few important disclosures. As many of our webinars, our intention here is just to share information and to educate. None of this is the rendering of personalized advice. If you do have any specific questions, we recommend you reach out to your financial advisor or legal or tax professionals for specific advice. A little bit about Tobias Financial Advisors. For those of you that may not know us or may not be current clients, we celebrated our 40th year anniversary last year. We're fee-only fiduciary financial advisors managing over $500 million in assets. We work with all types of clients, from individuals, including high net worth individuals, pension and profit sharing plans. And we have a great team of professionals, with a lot of tax, investment, and financial planning experience. And one of our key, goals really is to educate people, whether they're clients or not, about all the opportunities that exist from a financial planning perspective, because it's definitely a lot more than just investments. Just quickly wanted to share before we get started some of the upcoming chats that we have available. So these chats are open to everyone, to the public. So obviously, we communicate this to clients and prospective clients and some of our professional partners. But this is something that, if there's a topic here that interests you, you can share it with a friend, a colleague, a child, parent, whoever you think might benefit from this topic or any of the other topics. So we'll be talking about 529 plans and college planning this year. We'll be talking about required minimum distributions, what they are, how you can manage them, and some tax planning opportunities using your RMDs. We'll be talking about leveraging or how to leverage your employer retirement plans, whether that's a 401k or 403b, as well as kind of how they play with traditional or Roth IRAs. And then we'll also talk about working with a fee-only real fiduciary advisor. What does that mean? And what to look for, from your advisor, whether you're a client of ours or not. These are things that are important to understand. So without further ado, I'm going to transition this to Kat to talk to us a little bit about debt management and how we at Tobias Financial Advisors work with our clients to look at debt.
Thank you, Edgar, so much for the introduction. So, how do we look at debt and assets and the entire balance sheet, really? That's what we're trained to do as financial advisors. Often, a client may come to us to only look at the asset side. And so a client may come with a hodgepodge of investments, right? They may have investments, they may have a business, they may have other types of things on the sidelines, from art to collectibles. And it is our job to look at it because it may not necessarily be optimized based on what they need from those investments from an income perspective down the road, and whether or not they're optimized from an allocation perspective and tax perspective as well. And so our job is to clean that up, make sense of it so that it is allocated in a way that is going to meet the client's needs. But we don't just stop there. We look at the liability side. Some clients may come with credit card debt or student loans or a mortgage, for example, or even a business loan. And so we would be remiss not to look at that side as well, because these two pieces work together, especially as we're looking at building wealth over the long term. Some of these things are just not coordinated, and then we miss out the tax piece, which is so important, right? We can't say that we are true financial advisors if we're not assessing the tax impact on some of these decisions. We find that sometimes clients might, get a credit card, a student loan, a home, and they never really thought about these things. These things are not coordinated. So our job is to bring this all together to make sense of it, especially if they're thinking or even contemplating that they want to pay something off, where they may have to either take money out of an investment to pay something off, or they're in a really high tax bracket where they may compromise, using those dollars to pay off a debt that's probably 3% and is costing them 22, 24% on the federal tax bracket side. We have to look at what would be the most efficient way to maximize those dollars to build wealth over time. And ultimately, the goal, as we're looking at all of this holistically, Edgar, is to turn those debt and taxes into savings and investments.
So, Kat, one of the things that we hear a lot is, is debt, good or bad, right? So there's always two sides of debt, and there's people that I know that, they kind of just want to pay off their mortgage as quickly as possible. And then there's others that are looking to try to leverage, as much as possible. Can you talk to us a little bit about what, how to think about debt and what are the two sides of debt that folks should be considering?
Definitely. This is a great question, and often we get that from clients, and so I like to say, is that a tool or is it a trap, right? It could be seen as giving away your future or leveraging someone else's money to build your wealth, right? And let's think about that for a moment, because if we are starting out in life, or we are transitioning into a career, or even thinking about a business, we may need to get some debt in order to get those big ticket items, right? Let's look at those advantages, right? That will help us get there a lot faster, as opposed to waiting to accumulate those funds over a lifetime before we could buy a house. Imagine the first house that everybody has purchased that's on this call. Or maybe you have a son or daughter who's looking to buy a home, right? They may not have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 on the sidelines to make this purchase, right? So leverage can be seen as a way to get us there a little bit faster. Leverage can also allow us to get, for example, rental properties or a business, right? If the business is going to make money, then it makes sense to get that leverage to get some return on your investment. Leverage is important for emergencies. If you have a credit card, and most of us have credit cards, and maybe more than one in our wallet right now, if we have an emergency like a car repair or an expensive medical bill, then we just pull it out, and we know that we have the funds accessible to help offset that emergency. Leverage is also good, especially, again, those credit cards, because it's easy to track, right? No longer do you have to write checks like you did before. I mean, you do it by choice if that's something that you enjoy doing, but that is not necessary anymore, right? It helps you track things. It could even help you, look at where the money really is going, right? We have clients that don't like to write down where their expenses are, but if they look at their summarized American Express bill at the end of the year, then it's going to tell them exactly where the money went, right? And now that becomes the basis for other decisions we are going to make. For example, how much money do you need to live on during retirement, right? So the credit card essentially did the job for you. We also have other software that we use for clients to help, bring that together. Leverage is good, especially if you have those credit cards that are earning you points, right, or miles, right? Not too many people are flying right now, but if you're charging on Amazon and earning some points, once you're able to fly, a lot of you are going to go get those miles redeemed, right? Or cash rewards. That's one of my favorite ones. Getting money for using somebody else's money. Man, what a pleasure that is for me, especially, right? I buy myself something special with those cash rewards when I get them back. And also, good credit scores are going to reduce the cost of other loans and purchases, right? I mean, let's be real, that report card, that credit score becomes that report card of your personal finances in a way, right? If you're going to go buy a car, get a home, do something big, you need to have credit on the sidelines. Of course, there's good and then there's bad, right? Or the disadvantage, right? And we already said that it could be giving away your future, right? If you are racking up more debt than what you could handle, it could be giving away your future, because they're easy to use. Debt is easy to use and it's easy to build up those balances. So it cuts both ways, right? And it could also be that if you are overspending, right, you're getting to those high limits, then here you might not be able to get the lower rates that you might want when you either refinance a home or you go buy a car. You know, you want to be in a good, favorable position to, again, leverage somebody else's money to help you achieve a goal. Because you don't want to be stuck in a rut, and you definitely don't want to be in a mousetrap, right? Like that graphic is on the screen.
Thanks, Kat. So, one of the things that I think comes up often is, when should I use debt, or what is good debt, what's bad debt? And, I know we have some clients who, have used like margin accounts, for example, to finance home purchases instead of a regular mortgage for different reasons. But can you talk a little bit about, what is good debt, or what's bad debt, and then maybe what are some other types of debt that people maybe really haven't thought about, if there was a need for debt?
Yeah, so is that good or bad? It depends, right? And not everybody likes that answer. It depends, but it does depend. That's why we have to look at, as financial advisors, at the entire picture. But I really like this chart from NerdWallet. It's a recent U.S. study on debt, and if we look at that first section there, the total U.S. Debt is about $14 trillion, right? This is significant, and it could be a little bit scary if we look at it like that. But we also have to think that along with that amount of money that is owed, we're also paying about $2.5 trillion in federal taxes, right? So I don't want to get so lost in this that we forget that there's also a tax opportunity or implication to this. Now, when you are deciding if something is good debt or bad debt, you should simply ask yourself, is what I purchase right now going to appreciate in value over time, or is it going to depreciate in value over time? A simple question is, if you're using your credit card to buy, I don't know, a laptop, guess what? There's going to be another one coming up, and that's probably not going to be worth the same today as it's going to be a year from now. If you're going to buy a car, for example, a car today that you pay $30,000 for 5 years from now, it's probably not going to be worth $30,000. So again, this is a depreciating asset. Student loans, it depends on that one, right? If I have a student loan for $56,000 and the job that I could get after I pay for this degree pays me about $40,000 a year, then maybe I overpaid a little bit for that degree. I have to really rethink if that was worth it. But if the degree that I got is going to pay me far more than what I invested, then you're already getting a return on your investment, right? This is a depreciating, an appreciating education, essentially, what you got. For a mortgage, I mean, if you bought a home 10 years ago for $250,000 and it's worth, $300,000-$400,000 today, then of course that was a good debt to get into because it's an appreciating asset, right? So if you just ask yourself that, look at your credit card bill, look at the things that you pay every month, and ask yourself, is this going to make me, is this going to appreciate or depreciate over time? Now, you were saying, are there other types of loans? Yeah, of course, and they're not accounted for in this particular survey, but business loans, right? If the business is going to make me more money over time, then yeah, that could be a significant appreciating asset, and it's well worth going into that engagement. Intrafamily loans, these are really powerful tools, and we have used this for some of our clients. And I actually have a friend right now whose son in Colorado was going to buy a tractor. And the tractor was at a 5% rate if he wanted to get the loan. But she had money sitting in a money market account earning less than 1%. And so she said, hey, I'll lend you the money for a little bit more. Win-win situation, right? Now, if he doesn't pay her back, it becomes a gift, and that's a conversation for another day. But certainly, this is a great opportunity to talk to family. We also have margin, like you said, Edgar, and we've helped our clients with that to either get a home or get a new business. We've actually done that quite a few times for clients because they don't require the same type of underwriting. But you are borrowing against your investments, so I would say, you know, move forward with caution. Talk to your advisor to make sure they understand your entire financial picture before you use something like that. And of course, I'm sure you've heard of like reverse mortgages and personal loans. We're not going to go into detail here about those, but there are other options as you're thinking about leveraging and what's good and what's bad debt.
Yeah, and I think you might talk about this a little later, Kat, but you know, with the margin loans, a lot of times it's a matter of kind of looking at that trade-off, right? So let's say, I mean, you have the money, let's say in a brokerage account, and you want to buy a house or whatever. You know, what is the trade-off that you need to make if you're taking that out of your investments, for example, to purchase a home or a vacation home or an investment property? So I look forward to hearing a little bit more about kind of like how you think about that and how you look at that.
Yeah, that and other debts, of course. Yes, go ahead.
So how do you prioritize, right? And how do you think about kind of, you know, again, going back to the title, right, of the chat here today is how do you manage debt, and how do you kind of make sure that it fits into your overall financial plan in a way that's beneficial for you?
Yeah, so just like I said at the beginning, Edgar, sometimes just like investments, we may have them all over the place, right? So like, let's get organized. That would be the first step. Know what you have. Often we've asked people, you know, do you know what your credit card interest rate is? And they're like, I don't know what that is, right? So, or even your mortgage, right? So, or business loan. So it's really important to start with organizing your debts and putting them all in one place. Know the interest rates that you're paying, the minimum payment, even your normal payment. You know, some people may be in the process of accelerating that amortization schedule and they pay a little bit more each time. So it's important that you know what it is that you're putting into that principal. And then those total credit limits per line. That's really critical, especially if you're going above that 30% utilization level that, you know, once you go beyond that, it may impact your credit score. So you're going to be really, really careful. So first step is get organized. Know where your money is going and what you're paying for those debts. The second step, I would say, is identify if any of these liabilities, if there's possibilities to negotiate lower rate options for the debt. You know, if you have a student loan, for example, you may be able to refinance the loan under the new administration. You may even get, you know, some of it forgiven, which is great. Or you may work for an employer that is offering that as an employee benefit where they help offset part of the loan, right? So that is really important to look at. If you have a mortgage, especially now with the interest rates as low as they are, you might consider, if you're buying your first home, just negotiate, look around, see what options there are. So I would say for all of it, even for credit cards, right? I mean, you could easily create a 0% interest loan for yourself if you have really good credit and you just apply for a 0% credit card and then just, you know, roll everything into that credit card and just create an amortization schedule so you could pay it off before that 0% offer expires. I mean, these are little tiny moves, but very wise if you're looking to be more efficient. And then step 3 is look at different restructuring options, right? So not just from a single perspective, but can this all be put into one place, right? And it's not unheard of that people will roll up some of the debts either into a margin loan, like you said, or like a mortgage, for example, just to consolidate, simplify their life, even stretch out the debt. And it might make more sense to stretch it out because of the rate that you're paying is really not that significant when you look at it big picture. And what do I mean by that? Is that if there's any freed up cash, Edgar, you don't want that freed up cash and tax savings to go back into your pocket, right? You got to have a purpose for each of these dollars. And I'm known for telling our clients that each dollar, think of it as an employee. It has to go to work. It has to be efficient and produce for you. So you got to think of your dollars, they go to work. And so what you don't want to do is let those savings get absorbed back into your cash flow and not invested.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Kat. You know, and a couple just quick points, and then I have another question is, you know, we, like you said, I mean, we work with all types of clients. And fortunately, we do a lot of work also with like the children of our clients. And sometimes, you know, as a client, you're like, oh, well, you know, you may have been working for 20 years and you probably don't have, hopefully don't have any debt issues. But a lot of times the children of our clients, right, who are, like you said before, just starting out, they're just starting to explore debt. They most likely have some sort of student loans. And that's something that I think we spend a lot of time doing, as well as just working with the children of our clients. I think that's really good advice, not only for our clients, but for their children who may not be on this call, but this might be, you know, a good webinar to share with them down the line.
Yeah, right. And to add to what you were saying, Edgar, I mean, if you're wealthy and you have your things, you know, pretty organized, it's not a big deal to you, but you may have, you know, children or grandchildren coming to you that might put a little pressure on you, right? So we become a resource to educate that next generation.
Yeah, that's great. So can you take us through an example, you know, when you're looking at, because again, like I said earlier, right, you have some people that are like, well, I have a mortgage on my house, I'm going to retire in 10 years. I really just want to pay it off. I have the cash, let me pay it off. You know, does it make sense, right? And how do you guys look at that, and what kind of conversations are you having with clients to help them make the decision to manage that debt smartly?
Sure, right. It's all about being smart and using our brains as your financial advisors to help leverage and maximize your dollars, right? So what I love about leverage is that, especially now with the interest rates, is that we could co-create possibilities in a way that a client may have never seen them before, right? And I often say, with that is almost like playing tennis, right? You either play it at at the net, or you play it at the baseline, but you don't want to be in the middle because there's no man's land, right? And so what I mean by that is that either you're going to pay it off or you're going to stretch it out and then capitalize on the difference, right, to build your wealth. And this is a really good example. And there's a lot on this slide, so we'll go slowly. But if someone wants something like this, we do it for each client, looking at everything holistically. So if you look at the top row, you see on the left-hand side, possible refi, right? So let's say this client has $400,000 of a loan, their payment is $2,800, and their interest rate is 3.2%. And it just so happens that this client is able to, deduct this expense, right, on their taxes. So this is just kind of looking at Schedule A, depending on whether or not they're itemizing. Instead of doing this for a 15-year period and going on to 15 years and maybe not even investing or investing that additional difference, we could possibly look at the possibilities with a 30-year mortgage. So here we are on that second row. Thank you. Again, the same balance, but now their payment goes down significantly, almost $1,100 there, and is 3.5%. It's probably going to be lower. I mean, if you look at the rates today, they're probably under that for a 30-year mortgage. Still, you could deduct that from your taxes. That's not for every person. Okay, I just want to say that it's not for every person, but this is a possibility. And then, of course, we got to look at the tax bracket, right? Because what I said earlier is that those savings need to go somewhere, right? And if you could put that in a tax-deferred account, either a 401k, an IRA, and so forth, then now you're maximizing those savings. And so let's say, for example, this person is in the 24% federal tax bracket. Now, if you're in California, you're going to pay more, right? So we would, account for that as well in there, because now you're paying more for every dollar that you're spending. And so what we're looking at the bottom there, that speckled red essentially represents the first column, which is a 15-year mortgage, right? It ends up being at 15. And then the dark red is that 30-year mortgage. So essentially we stretched it out. That speckled blue is showing, hey, at the end of 15 years, if you actually waited until year 15, once you paid off the mortgage and you started to invest, then yeah, of course you could start investing, but over time you're going to see that doesn't accumulate as quickly, or you don't have as much of a large pot of savings as you would if you had instead stretched out the debt and started investing earlier, which is illustrated there with the dark blue. This is going to be different for each person. Some people come in with a beginning balance, obviously, for their investments, but this is just an example of somebody just starting out and they have a zero investments. Let's say somebody came in with nothing at all. What could possibly happen in 30 years could be big. And also, I just want to say a lot of people don't keep those mortgages beyond 30 years, or they don't even stay in that home for 30 years. They may go out and buy another home. So that's something to think about as well.
This is really great, Kat. I mean, I think you know, you've mentioned it a few times, and a lot of times, you know, we know financial planning is behavioral in many ways as well. So you know, this may not be the right strategy for everyone. The results may look different depending on your returns, but ultimately, also it just comes down to, you know, what is that person comfortable with? Again, you might have someone that's just, you know, I don't want debt, period, right? So then, you know, we'll work with them to figure out what's the most efficient way of paying that debt down. And then you have others that having the leverage is not a concern, and kind of doing something like this could really have a significant impact on their overall savings. So this is really great. So we have a few minutes left here, but can you tell us, you know, what do we tell clients? How do we help clients become a little smarter, or, you know, managers of debt?
Definitely. You know, what I've noticed is that we need some disciplined restructuring, right? We just got to put things in place to make it easy so you don't have to think about it. And what we have assessed is that most of us are not wired to think of this as a whole entire pie, right? This is why you hire a professional, so you can look at this holistically and make it more efficient for you. So structuring, you know, the liabilities so it's efficient, and then structuring the savings plan on a monthly basis or a yearly basis, whatever that might be for the person, is really, really important. So just setting that and putting it all in place so it's easy for you. And then, of course, again, with the end goal, let's not forget that if we turn these debts and the tax savings into savings, then we're going to have greater investments in the future. And if you are in a good financial position, then you are more likely to be in a better financial position to help your family in the future as well. So you got to take your oxygen first when it comes to financial planning.
I appreciate that, Kat. So we want to be respectful of people's time. We do have 2 minutes left. Kat, thank you so much. I know this is a lot of information to try to compress into 30 minutes, and for many of our clients, it's a much longer process, kind of looking at this and doing the analysis. But so we do have a minute or two for questions. If anyone has any questions and is interested, you can type your question in the meeting software there, and we'll try to get to it here in the last minute. If we can't get to your question for any reason, we will get back to you. So again, just as a reminder, you can ask any questions that you might have just using the chat feature of the meeting software there. Just give us a second there. So okay, so one of the questions, Kat, that came in, let's see, we have 1 minute. So is, and I've kind of alluded to this a few times, but should I take the money out of like my IRA, for example, to pay down a mortgage? You know, if that's, you know, if that's what I want to do, and why should I or shouldn't I?
Well, I would challenge you and say that's really expensive money. In that you're paying, even if you're at the 12% tax bracket, to pay that 12% on that money in federal income taxes, and maybe more at the state level to pay off a debt that's 3%. It just doesn't make sense from a numbers perspective. We could do the amortization schedule and show what that looks like, because that dollar is going to be more than $1 when you take it out of your IRA. So it gets pricey. And of course, we have to look at the long-term impact on your portfolio, right? If you take that lump sum, then how does that impact you as far as, is that portfolio going to be there for your anticipated longevity, right? Does that make sense in the long term. So walking through those steps is really helpful for clients. And this is not the first time I've heard this question, Edgar, by the way, because I know people could get a little bit anxious, but certainly want to explore a little bit more with each person.
Thank you, Kat. So, Kat, we have less than a minute, but there's one other question here that we talked a little bit about, but maybe you can elaborate on a little bit, is margin loans and kind of how they work. What are they, especially with interest rates being so low? And then we'll wrap up there.
Sure. So margin loans, you're basically borrowing against your investments. I would just say it's really important to talk to your financial advisor about this. Right now, the rates are pretty low. You know, some rates, depending on the amount that you take out, could be less than 3%, right? So if it means that I have to go out into the market and let's say get a personal loan for 9%, but I could get it in my margin, you know, for 3%, you know, or less, or even a tiny bit more, then that makes sense, right? So I would just encourage you to talk to your financial advisor so that you have that wiggle room to do that and other safety nets as well.
Yeah, and I would just add the other thing too with margin loans, technically, they don't have like an amortization schedule, right? There's no like payback period. And you'll have to pay it back if the value of your investments go down. But so that's actually another important factor. I think there is like, if you take a margin loan, you have to have, you know, be smart enough to create your own amortization and say, hey, I'm going to pay it down. You know, you're just not taking it to have it sit there. You're going to pay it down and kind of have a strategy for paying it down. So, Kat, thank you so much. Super, super happy to have you talk about this today. Again, a lot of people think about debt as a problem, but debt sometimes is an opportunity as well. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to explore a little bit about debt and managing debt. Thank you, everyone who was able to join us today. I appreciate your time. A recording will be sent out to those of you that joined us today, and please feel free to share it along. You know, we're happy to disseminate this information and share some of the knowledge and the wisdom that our advisors have and share with their clients every day. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.